Well, hello traders and investors. I'm LA Little. This is your daily NeoTA wrap where we take a look at these markets from a neoclassical perspective, looking at supply and demand on the charts, using that to make wise decisions about when to enter, when to exit, which way to point. Do the show 4 times a week. It's Monday through Thursday, broadcast at 10 o'clock Eastern Time, archived on YouTube, son of a channel, LA Little. If you want to subscribe, you can reach up in the right hand corner, hit the subscribe button. Anytime I push some public content, you'll get a notification. I've got up the trends, qualified trends for the general markets. You can get to it on the site. What I'm looking at is the short term now. I used to, tell folks is like when you see all of these bullish, things are pretty bullish, and that's been the case for the most part, pretty much everywhere, right? Still is the case in most cases. Energy, the one thing that isn't, right? And we've known that for a while, but everything else is. But what is happening again, and what usually happens over time, is you start to see changes on the short-term trend. If those last long enough, if they persist long enough, they will affect things over here on the intermediate term time trend. If those last long enough, then the long-term trends will be affected. And so that's how it usually plays out. What we see is, again, 2 or 3 of these go negative, and when they do, pretty much everything goes negative. And that's what's happening right now, right? You got 2 or 3 things still holding it up. One is bullish here. Another is the financials. So you got healthcare, financials. You also have industrials. And those 3 things are pretty much what is holding this S&P up. Basic materials a little bit, but it's really those 3. And so as I look at the way this is playing out, these are going to go along with everything else, and then everything will be negative, and then it will rotate, right? It's periodic, right? It goes like this. And then every now and then you get a swing that's bigger, right? Either up or down. And that's when these over here get affected. And so what we're looking at is a short-term trend correction. That is what defines a range. I've been talking about a range for a long time. That is what defines a range, right? Where prices trade inside some defined amount of space, and they go around, and sometimes they get out of it on both sides, but pretty much all the price is contained in that range. And that's what we got happening right now. If we look at the numbers here, what happened today? Down 1.34% on the S&P, the small caps. The Nasdaq down 1%, as was S&P. Dow the other way. VIX spikes, right? Volatility spikes. If you look at it from the commodity standpoint, flat even on the safety stuff. Oil down again. Moving to the indexes, look at the S&P. So what happened today? Well, today you actually got one of those outside the range things that we were just talking about. Range has been right here. This has been the key part of the range. Today you trade under it, you close under it. That was a swing point low. That changes your trend to the downside because it was sideways before. And so now you get a suspect bearish trend, and you're down here coming back towards this swing point high. Let's look at that. That's the next thing you're going to see, right? You're going to try to come into the swing point high, and you're going to have to try and test it. The low here on the last time we tried to do is 2405. You look at this one, it's 2405.77. You get to 2405.70. So this would be the second trip back to that. When it comes back twice, usually it's the bottom third he's going to try to trade to. So you can expect this, if it continues, to try to get into that bottom third. That would also move you underneath this swing point low, potentially on a close, and reconfirm the bearish trend. So S&P changing. If we look elsewhere, and let's pop over to Nasdaq, right? Actually, let's go to the NDX. So the NDX has been bearish already. That one changed 2 days back, 3 days. That change of trend, right, broke this swing point low, got up underneath it. What did it do today? Tried to break it down, actually held. It was down 0.9, but that was after a big bounce yesterday. So it's kind of a doji right there at the bottom. Can't decide. These things happen in front of quote-unquote news events many times. And tomorrow, of course, you got some economic data with the employment number. How that plays out, is anybody's guess. We could get another push down, or we could have set up the lows of the range. If you look here, The low of this particular range, for the most part, has been, prior to this, has been this area here. When it broke down out of that, right, got down up underneath here, that kind of started to define another range, or broaden this range, if you will. And, I call that range expansion to the downside. And so essentially that's what we got. And that put us down into this larger range. And so that's where we're at now. So when we look at this from a perspective of where are we going, bottom of the range is here. We just saw in the S&P, that idea is that is where that could hold. Now, if you want to get into the negative case, you can pull over the weekly chart because tomorrow happens to be Friday. And on the weekly chart, you've got a swing point low right here on the NASDAQ. That would be the first time the weekly charts begin to change if it were to close up underneath that number. That number is 5568.47. If we go back over here, it's going to be this low, 5568.47. So you can see how important this low has become. Let's just take both cases. Let's assume it trades down to that, maybe even test it, but closes above it. Then that potentially will be a successful test of that low. In other words, it tries to get under it, can't, or it'd be a failed test. Let me back up. Failed test of that low. In other words, it tries to get under it, can't, fails, and you bounce back up. That would give you the bounce potential, right? If it comes on less volume, that would make it a failed test. If you don't, if you get up underneath it and stay under it, right, then you can continue to the downside and bringing that weekly chart back over. That next area where there's some support is way down here. That's another 100 points to the downside. And so that would be a nice big spill to the downside if it happens. That's the most negative case out there, and it's on the NDX. And it's not surprising since the NDX has been the one leading us down. If we come over to the Russell, now the Russell, big bearish engulfing today, comes all the way back down into the bottom of its two-part range. It's kind of, this is the one that's been, doing a big range inside a range. There's one here, there's another one up above it. They're kind of equidistant. It's been trading either in this lower part or in the higher part. It's coming down towards the bottom of that again. If it can't hold up here, then what's going to happen is you're going to get into the lower part. Once you get in there, if you get in deep enough, you try to seek the other side. That's just the way it works. And if you pull it over here and you look at it on a weekly time frame, you can see that huge range that's been going on now for quite a while. And it's right there. And it's been trying to get out. Can't get out on the top side up here. Going to come back into that range. That middle part that we were just looking at is right about there. So you can kind of see how that's lined up. Do note here that if you were to get a real sell-off, you got a lot of swing point lows that are sitting almost in the same spot. And so if you come to test the bottom again, it could become a big issue, because if you break through there, you don't have much to stop it, right? You kind of got this low area here, but you kind of come back to that big swing point high as potentially your next real test. So the bullish retest regens back here. That is a very bullish spot if it were to come back into that area, even from here down, right? From there down, probably about to right there. So somewhere in that area there is the one that you'd want to be buying into. And that's the Russell, that's the small caps. Let me see what else. Not much else happened. I think those are the major things you see out here tonight. I think that's what you need to focus on tomorrow. Is the NDX going to find its lows at that area that we just talked about, or is it not? Is the S&P going to do the same, right? We're going to find it in this green area you see here or not. If it doesn't, you can get more downside. That's just the way it's set up. And yeah, they're going to be buying it here and there all the way down if in fact it continues that way. So I don't think there's a panic situation here yet, but you do have a slow degradation of price and expansion of the range to the downside. You want to buy the down, you want to buy the bottoms of the ranges, sell the tops, and you want to keep doing that as long as it's a range and it doesn't cave in. And I don't think we're at a point where it's going to cave in just yet. Have yourself a great one. Take care. Good night.